Alright, so before we move on to his V skill, V trigger, and V reversal, I forgot to mention that his light Tatsu leads into his critical art. Yeah, just something really important to know about Ryu when you're doing combos. Alright, with that out of the way, let's move on to his V skill. So his V skill is called Mind's Eye. It's basically a parry, and what the parry is basically another form of a block, but with less hit stun and without chip. And if you do a successful parry, it does build your V gauge. So in this game, you can parry every attack in this game, including fireballs, including supers, including multi-hit moves, if you're good enough at doing it and you have the timing down, which by the way, it is somewhat difficult. The only thing you cannot parry are grabs. So let me give you a short demonstration of the parry. And it doesn't matter, unlike in Third Strike, it doesn't matter if it hits low. Oh, whoops, let me activate his guard recovery option. So it doesn't matter if it hits low or high, or if it's a light, or if it's a hard normal. Whoops. There we go. Alright, so you parry, as you can see, you just parried pretty much everything. However, one thing to know is that you are put into a counter hit state when you do the parry. So if your opponent's sniffing out that you're trying to do a parry, they could punish you heavily on this. Yeah, so I dropped my full punish, but there you go. That's one of the risks of using the parry. Also, a lot of things, a lot of what I saw in tournament streams and whatnot is people using it as an anti-air. Oops. So you can surprise them with a grab, but however, you cannot really punish a jumping. To my knowledge, you cannot punish a jumping. But I guess you can grab them if they're surprised. But I'm pretty sure if they're ready for it, they'll be able to tech it. So the point is, don't use it as an anti-air when you have better options like this, and the Shoryuken. Alright, so how can you use a V skill? You can use a V skill if one, you're really good, two, you know what move they're gonna throw out and you know how many hits it is, and if you have a punish follow-up right afterwards. So you gotta be thinking very far in advance. You gotta know your opponent well enough. You gotta be ready and have good reactions, and that's pretty difficult to do in a real fight. If you're good like forward and you can parry Bison Scissors Kick, and which by the way is not normally punishable, and you can get a full punish out of it. But otherwise, it's a very high risk move because you're put in a counter hit state, and also the reward for it is not that great. You could parry a fireball and build your V gauge. You could parry a jump in, but you won't get much out of it. So it's really depending on what you're parrying to get the reward. And also the V trigger is only 2 stocks, so you don't really need to do it to build your V gauge, the V trigger that fast. So yeah, just use it if you really know what you're doing. But otherwise, if you're just learning Ryu, try to avoid using it until you're more confident in your fundamentals. Alright, that's enough talking. Let's move on to his V trigger. So his V trigger, in general, what it does is adds more damage to his Hadouken and his Shoryuken. His Hurricane Kick, however, is still the same damage. On all of his normals and all of his specials, it adds more stun. So you can stun your opponent much faster, and once you stun your opponent, you can get an even bigger full combo out of it. Alright. Other things that change. The only thing that changes is his Hadouken. So you can charge it up, you just hold the button, and he just charges it up. And as you can see, it guard breaks. So if you charge it up and you manage to get them to block and guard break, you can do a full combo afterwards. I don't think that was a true combo though. I don't think that was a true follow-up. There we go. Alright. The reason I didn't say that was a true follow-up was because the scaling. So, as you saw, I just did a 3-hit combo after Ryu, after the guard break. So, in other words, the scaling on when you do a guard break with his Denjin. See, that normally does 227, but after a guard break, it only did like 90 something. Alright, one thing I almost forgot to mention is that his EX Fireball charges up much faster, so you can catch your opponents off guard, for example. For example, this. Okay, he just parried that, but I need to turn that off. Alright, let's see. Alright, so he parried the second hit, but let's say you catch your opponent off guard, you know, and then you just do an EX Hadouken in the face. It's a trick or gimmick that you can use once in a while, but for more experienced players, you're gonna get beaten out of it. But it's just something you can do. Realistically, I don't think you could do EX Hadouken to get the guard break in most situations. But what you want to do is hold it, bait them to jump, but then you release it later so that they actually land on it, or you charge it up and then they try to jump over it, but maybe you release it too soon and then they end up not being able to jump away fast enough. So one thing I forgot to mention, but you probably noticed, is that his fireball travels much faster. So that's the light version and this is the hard version. So yeah, the Hadoukens have really cool properties in V-Trigger mode. Let's see what else. It's guard break. Oh, of course. His critical art changes from Shinku Hadouken to Denjin Hadouken. And just like his fireballs, it guard breaks. However, the difference between a guard break from his super and a guard break from a regular fireball is that with a regular fireball, you have enough time to dash up and do a full combo. However, with his Denjin, you do not have that much time to do to follow up after a guard break. You can still do a full combo, but you can only do it in the corner. Outside the corner, it's not gonna reach. Okay, never mind. A sweep break reached, but I was right in his face. That's the difference. So in the corner, let's say you have a full V-Trigger. Let's say you have full V-Trigger, full critical art, and your opponent does not have V-Trigger. Here's one of the ways you can use it. So crouching high punch. Oops, I messed up there. That's supposed to be a super cancel. So let me do that again. And then you can do a follow-up combo. So as you can see, I did a lot of gray life, a lot of block, a lot of chip. And if I followed up with a combo, I just failed to do it. But if I did follow up with a combo, despite the scaling, it would do a decent chunk for it. So that's something you could do in a sort of chip situation with V-Trigger and a full meter. But yeah, otherwise though, it's it's still like a gimmick, so don't use it too often. Especially if they have V reversal, they can escape it. Alright, so that covers his V-Trigger. Yeah, it pretty much covers his V-Trigger, not much else to say about it. Let's go over his V reversal. So let's have the dummy do this. Oops. Alright, so that's his V-Trigger. It knocks them down. You activate with a punch. Just forward all punches. And you can turn the situation around them to do whatever you want, reverse the situation. So it's a good V-Trigger. It does knock them down. They can quick rise out of it, of course. The AI just wasn't doing it because they're set to record. But yeah, that covers his V-Skill, V-Trigger, and V-Reversal. Let me know if you feel like I've missed anything out. Alright, so let's move on to his combos.